Ladies and gentlemen, I think it's safe to say that I'm obsessed with building RC airplanes. However, there's one problem. The airplanes I build take months to complete, they are expensive and difficult to transport. In other words, I'm lacking a smaller airplane with which I can have lots of fun. First of all, I want to mention that this won't be a step-by-step tutorial. Instead, I will try to show you the techniques I use so that you can design your own airplanes. The material I'll be using is a 5mm insulation board. It is super strong, light, and pretty much my favorite material to work with. I started off by laying the fuselage out on paper. Once I was happy with it, I cut it out and transferred it onto the foam. Once I had all the pieces ready, I assembled the fuselage and bonded the pieces using hot glue. I have also added additional material into the corners. This will allow me to round the edges without weakening the structure. Then I have added the wooden plate that will support the engine. This part was recycled from an earlier airplane. The left wall of the fuselage was glued into place. I now needed to figure out a detachable mechanism for mounting the tail. And here's what I came up with. The first piece of wood, together with the aluminium pipe, will be fixed to the fuselage. The second piece will be attached to the horizontal stabilizer. And the third piece, together with the carbon fiber rod, will support the vertical stabilizer. Everything will come together and will be held by a screw in the front. At least, that's the plan. First of all, I needed to attach the aluminium pipe to the piece of wood. I achieved this by supergluing a few pieces of wood and filling the remaining space with hot glue. I also somehow needed to attach the nut that the bolt will screw into. To give the hot glue some structure it can adhere to, I have soldered 2 pieces of wire to the nut. And it actually ended up working pretty well. Finally, I have glued the whole assembly into place. Here is a quick demonstration how the tail will attach. The servo that will control the elevator was now glued into place as well. Lastly, before closing the fuselage, I needed to attach the engine. The engine I have is a rather weird model that attaches from the front, but it was laying around in my room, so I decided to use it. A quick test confirmed that everything is working fine. I can't say many good things about this ESC, however, it does have this cool looking purple heatsink hidden under the plastic. I therefore decided to expose it and make it a design feature of the airplane. I have attached it near the nose of the airplane. The airflow from the engine will help keep it cool. I also needed to figure out the mounting system for the wing. As this plane is all about functionality, I decided to attach it using rubber bands. The main advantage of this is that the wing is less likely to break upon crashing. The wooden rods that I have installed will act as anchor points for the rubber bands. And now it's finally time to close the fuselage. Next, I have removed the plastic film covering the foam and rounded off the edges of the fuselage using a knife. And in order to create the round end bit, I have laminated several layers of the foam together. The part was then attached using hot glue and carved into its final shape. Finally, the edges of the fuselage were sanded to make them nice and round. My next challenge was to create a landing gear for the airplane. I really wanted it so that I don't break the propeller upon each landing. I also wanted it to be detachable and as robust as possible. The simplest solution I could think of was to use this piece of aluminium as a skid. The support was glued to the airframe, and the skid is attached using a single screw. Since the engine is housed inside the fuselage, I decided to add an air intake to help keep it cool. And now for the fun part. The whole fuselage needs to be covered in this red foil. The stuff is pretty much perfect for any flat surfaces. It is durable, pretty, and easy to work with. It does require a bit of patience, but the results are worth it. Finally, I have covered the nose of the airplane with black electrical tape. Now that the fuselage is finished, I have started working on the wing. This piece of foam will form the skin. I have trimmed the end and pre-folded the leading edge. To keep this build as simple as possible, I decided to avoid putting any complicated support structures inside the wing. Instead, I have simply attached these stripes of foam. Next, I have attached the servos that will control the ailerons. And now the task of closing the wing. This is never easy, because you have to apply a lot of glue fast so that it doesn't cool down. And to help me keep it closed while the glue dries, I have used these 4 pieces of wood. Then, I have trimmed the trailing edge and started working on the ailerons. I have first cut them out of the wing, then I have angled the inside surface to allow for downward deflection, and finally, before attaching them back, I have laminated them using tape. Next, I have covered up the wingtips and created an opening in the fuselage for the cables. I have also installed the mounting points for the rubber bands on the wing. 2 in the back and 1 in the front. You will later see exactly how they will work. Another thing I like to do is to reinforce the corners of the wing with a thin sheet of aluminium. From my experience, they always get damaged when you transport the airplane. And finally, it's time to cover up the wing. Always do this slowly and take care to squeeze out any air bubbles. And the wingtips were covered up with black electrical tape. Next, I had to retrieve the ailerons from under the foil so that they can still deflect. The last thing left to do was to connect the ailerons to the servos. And now, onto the tail of the airplane. I decided to make both the vertical and horizontal stabilizer out of a single sheet of foam with a bit of carbon fiber reinforcement. The elevators were created the same way as the ailerons, except I have connected them up with a piece of steel wire, the same kind that I use as push rods for the servos. Now I have installed the wooden mounting piece and the carbon fiber reinforcement. Then, the tail was covered in the same silver foam as the main wing. This sheet of foam will form the vertical tail. I have first glued the carbon fiber rod into the slot and then covered the whole piece in the red film. Finally, I have attached the wooden mount to the bottom of the tail. And the elevator was attached to the servo. So, here are all the parts that make up the airplane. And I would dare to say that I have succeeded in making it portable. And on top of that, it is very easy to put together. You take the tail and slap it onto the fuselage. The whole thing is attached with a single screw. Then, you mount the servo arm. It is also attached with a single screw. Next, you attach the wing with 2 rubber bands, one in the back and one in the front. Then you screw on the landing skid, and finally the propeller. And just like that, the airplane is ready to fly. It's quite windy outside, but I have faith in this airplane. Let's see what it can do. The airplane turned out to fly quite well. Although it was a bit tail heavy at first, after adding weight to the nose there was no problem. The low kV motor on a 2-cell battery gave this airplane some really long flight times. I have one more of these exact same motors laying around at home. If you have a good idea on what airplane I should put it on, please let me know. I was thinking of maybe building a Spitfire or something along those lines. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you have enjoyed it, please hit the like button. It would make it possible for me to make videos like this in the future.